My guest here, Aaron Davison, who is a musician. He's a Berkeley grad, so when I was young, man, I was I was just too poor, but I just really wanted to go to Berkeley, the Berkeley School of Music. That to me would have been the ultimate. I never was able to make it, but to me, people that get a chance to do that and learn, they really learn the right way. They get the great foundation, and you end up knowing music inside and out. So I know you got the skills. I've heard some of the stuff, and I bought your product. And licensing music for TV, films, games, things like that is a whole nother area that a lot of people overlook, Aaron. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of turn it over to you. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and your journey and how you went on that way? Because most of us in this music industry, even myself included, I started out as a guitar player in a band, and I ended up coming to California with my band and everything. We had some moderate success, and the band ended up getting a deal on Capitol Records and things like that too. So we had some moderate skill, but that big breakthrough in the music industry is very hard to do, and most people tend to think that I've got to get a record deal. I've got to get a record deal. I've got to get a record deal. So I want to. I had a webinar the other day about how to make how to fire the record companies. And that's basically what it was. How to fire the record companies, because there are resources out here now where you can put your own stuff out and have it retail ready. And there's also things like what you're doing here, pitching your music to film and TV and things like that, games and all that. Things that the traditional, to make a long story short, the traditional way of dealing with music and musicians has changed dramatically and drastically. So why don't you go ahead and take it over, Aaron, and I'll let you explain to them. Tell us your journey.
Sure. Well, colleague, first of all, I want to say this is fantastic. Just listening to all the information you're providing about recording. I'd love to have you come on and speak to my subscribers. I'm sure they'd really value what you have to offer. But yeah, you're absolutely right. In terms of licensing, my story essentially, like you mentioned, I went to Berkeley. I'm actually not a Berkeley graduate. I attended Berkeley for 2 years. I was a songwriting major when I was at Berkeley in the mid-1990s, and music licensing was one of those things that I heard about quite a bit during my time at Berkeley. And a couple of my teachers were involved in the music licensing industry. There was one songwriting teacher in particular that I had that was really heavily involved in the business and had her own publishing company. So it was one of those things that I was really familiar with from my time at Berkeley. But when I was at Berkeley, I was 19 when I started Berkeley. And I was really young, and I really had my sights set on being a quote-unquote rock star. I really wanted to put a band together and tour and get a record deal. So anything short of that, at the time just didn't seem dramatically appealing to me. So to make a long story short, I left Berkeley after a couple of years. I relocated to Chicago, and I put a band together in Chicago, and we were together for about 3 years, and we toured around the Chicago area in the Midwest. And things were going really well. We had started sort of cultivating a following in the Chicago area. And after about 3 years, we broke up. There were some internal problems and conflicts in the band, which, is kind of common amongst bands. But I remember feeling really, I just invested all this time with these 3 other people and money and energy. And I just felt like I was sort of back to square one. I felt really discouraged. I felt like I had wasted a lot of time. So I really wanted to find a way to make money from music that wasn't contingent upon, 3 or 4 other people. And that's when I sort of remembered licensing, and I read an article about another Berkeley alumnus who was making a living licensing music, and I sought out, a publisher, and within about 6 months had signed a publishing deal, and about a month later had my first song on national television.
Oh, wow. That's the fast track, though, buddy. I got to tell you. Now, let me ask you this. Did you, you mentioned another Berkeley alumnus that was able to make it in that industry. Did you seek him out as like a mentor? Because I know finding somebody that can be a mentor is huge in a lot of areas.
Well, I didn't actually seek that person out. The story was I actually sought out my former songwriting teacher at Berklee, and she had her own publishing company that by this point was really well established, especially in the TV niche. And I sent her some stuff, and the funny thing is I sort of assumed she remembered me from when I attended her class, but I sent her several songs and she ended up signing one, after a month or two of corresponding. And she didn't remember who I was, and I sort of assumed the whole time that she did, but we were emailing back and forth, and she's like, by the way, how did you find out about me? So, I mentioned that because I think part of it is who you know, but at the same time, if you know who the right people are in the industry and you're able to make contact with them, you don't necessarily need to have an established relationship. You just need to know who the right people are.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Well, let me ask you this then. What would you say was the one defining moment that made you make that change? Because, here you are. That's a huge commitment for somebody to go to Berklee School of Music, and you have your band and all that, so it's obvious that your commitment was there, you're serious, and you were all in. So to make a complete left turn like that is huge. It's got to even be scary. What was the big turning point that made that happen and just made you decide to do it?
That made me decide to pursue licensing?
Yeah, that made you just kind of know that, okay, this is the way I need to go. Because I understand that the band started going through these things and all that too. But and the reason why I'm asking that is because I had a parallel kind of thing with myself, because my band ended up, kind of breaking up and going through some internal stuff. But I decided that I wanted to be in there. But like I said, I was a guitar player, so my goal was to be, quote unquote, the greatest guitar player in the world, most guitar players. But But I ended up stumbling into becoming an engineer quite by accident, because a guy was just watching me over the course of about a year or so, a few years actually, and then saw me teaching myself how to record my own songs on little gear. And when an opportunity opened, he asked, well, hey, I know you're doing this other thing here, but would you be interested in checking this out? There's a job opening here. So then that completely changed my path around.
Sure. Yeah, well, I think my story is similar in that, like I said, I was familiar with licensing from years, prior to this point when I was at Berklee, but I think like a lot of young people, when I started out pursuing music, to me, it was sort of, I wanted to go all the way. I wanted to, quote unquote, make it, and anything short of that just didn't seem that appealing to me. And I think over the years I've realized that, any success that you have in the music industry is exciting, and we're celebrating, whether or not it's having a song on a national television show or, making a full-time living as a performing musician. I think the goal should be to create a viable career from music, and however you can do that, whether it's through a combination of licensing and performing, recording, in your case, doing engineer work. There's a lot. I guess the reality is there's a lot of different roads you can go down, and it's not necessarily all or nothing. I think there's a lot of different ways you can make a living playing, doing music, and music licensing just turns out to be, one of those ways. Well,
Aaron, let's do this then. For our listeners, give me a definition. What exactly is music licensing?
Sure. Music licensing is just simply selling someone else the rights to use your song. So in the example of a TV shows all the time, and I would encourage your listeners to just, if you're not familiar with licensing, just pay attention to the background music that you hear in TV shows, in movies. Every piece of music you hear is licensed from someone, and licensing just means that they're buying the rights to use your music.
Now, why would somebody want to buy the rights to an unknown person's music? Why not just go out and get Beyonce or Justin Timberlake?
Well, and in some cases they do, but really well-known established songs are a lot more expensive. They come with much heftier licensing fees. So, depending on the budget of the production, that might not even be an option. So what happens in a lot of cases is music supervisors will have sort of an idea of a popular song they'd like to hear in a specific scene, but they can't afford that particular song. Maybe it's a Beyonce song, for example, but that song maybe has a $25,000 price tag attached to it. They then turn to independent musicians that create music in the style of a Beyonce or a Justin Timberlake or whoever the artist in question is, and then they're able to license that song for a much more affordable fee.
Well, you just said, and people listen to what he just said. This was very important little nugget, so I don't want it to get past you what he said. He said, in the style of. That's very, very powerful, because what you want to do is model what's working out there. Why try to reinvent the wheel? If you hear some music out there and everything, and that music has made it, that type of thing is going on. I get surprised a lot of times when one of the big questions when somebody gets asked, well, okay, what kind of music do you do or whatever, my music's not like anybody else's. So that's bull. I mean, everybody has some kind of influences, and your music sounds or has some kind of influence like somebody else, and it's not a bad thing. And also, it can be a bad thing if you say that my music doesn't sound like anybody else, because if your music doesn't sound somewhat reminiscent of somebody's thing to make people connect with you, then more than likely it's going to disconnect and not get you attention. Is that a fair statement, do you think?
Sure, I would agree. I mean, especially in the context of music licensing. I mean, if your music is completely left of center and completely avant-garde, it's hard to sort of know where those types of songs fit. So it's not that you can't be original, but, in particular in the music licensing industry, supervisors are looking for songs that have an established sound. So yeah, it needs to be, somewhat mainstream.
Yeah, in the style of, I think is a wonderful thing, because, I look at, like I said, I take myself as an example for how I've learned over the years. And the way I learned engineering, and I'm still learning right now to this day, is I learn by watching others and emulating what they do. If I like what it is they're doing, it sounds good and successful, I'm not going to try and go out and find the brand new thing that nobody else has discovered. Everything I know, I learned from somebody else, from some other source, and I'm proud to mention that, because that, to me, is the best way to learn, and it saves you a lot of time. I was lucky enough to get into the studio when I started early on and work with some of the best engineers and the biggest artists to learn the right way. But right now, people that are on my list, some of you that are listening to me right now and have sent me in your MP3s and stuff like that, I listen and learn to what you're doing, because a lot of you are doing some amazing stuff. And I like that. I like how they did such and such, and then I'll think about that and then maybe apply that kind of thing. Some of you guys are doing some processing on drums and things like that I'll say, okay, I like how that sounds, and using samples, stacking, things like that, all these little techniques and everything that I don't necessarily get a chance to experiment and do myself anymore. So if I hear somebody else do it, it catches my ear. So Aaron, I wanted to ask you this, okay, let's talk a little bit about when people go into this and everything, the other side of it is publishing, okay? Because, we know in the music industry, everybody wants to get in and get a record deal and get a publishing deal and everything. So is there any difference between a publishing deal for dealing with music licensing as opposed to the traditional publishing deal that most people think of?
Well, there is, and I'm definitely more familiar with the publishing side of things in the context of music licensing. I'll tell you how publishing works in the music licensing business, and maybe you can kind of tell me how it differs from traditional publishing. But I think when people think of traditional music publishers, they're thinking of people who pitch songs to artists. But in the context of the licensing industry, music publishers are people who pitch songs to music supervisors. So publishers are basically just people who shop music for a living. I guess in either aspect of the music industry, that's the same. But publishers that do a lot of music licensing have established relationships with music supervisors. So they know who needs what, they know who's looking for what kind of music, and you can connect directly with music supervisors, but sometimes it's easier to find a publisher who will do that on your behalf, simply because they have the connections and relationships in place that takes a lot of time to establish. So a good publisher has a lot of relationships established, and if they like your music, they will help you market your music to music supervisors.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this business has so many different facets to it, and that all does tie in because it's the same thing in the music industry, basically, and I know a lot of people. I for example, have a friend that started out as a songwriter for, it used to be A&M Records back in the 80s and 90s. Now he is like the main cat because he ended up getting in with the video games. I forget the biggest company. It's one of the biggest video game, but this is the company that does Madden and all them. So he ended up getting in with making music for that company, and I mean, like, he's a multi-millionaire now. He did well as a songwriter anyway. But once he got into that gaming thing, it just exploded to a whole other thing. Yeah. And, you can do so many things out here. This is part of why I think we are doing what we do as far as reaching out to the people that's coming up and passing on our information. I just started a site called 10bucktutorials.com, and reason why I did that is because everybody kept hitting me with, because not everybody can afford, like, to hire me to mix their stuff or for personal coaching and things like that. They're like, colleague, we just need a few nuggets here and there that we can take and run with and everything. So I started coming up with these little tutorials that I could give people that only cost $10 a month to be subscribed to. And what that does is it opens up the door for people who want to find a different way of doing some things, and then when something comes up, you're ready. Because that's a big key, too, is being ready. Having a lot of stuff ready. I just got a lot of people on my list from a promotion that I did recently. And a few people sent me emails just saying, I don't think I'm ready yet. I don't know enough about music, such and such, to record my stuff. And I would always send them back something saying, listen, now is the time to start from the very beginning, because first of all, it's just going to make anything you do better and give you more experience, and you're doing it simultaneously. Secondly, if something comes up, and if you just happen to have something ready when an opportunity comes up, that puts you right there. Just being ready. So.
Yeah. What's the name of the site, colleague? 10 Buck Tutorials.
10 Buck Tutorials. 10 the TEN spelled out bucktutorials.com. And but that was like that's my easy entry level, because like I have some higher end products and things like that, but a lot of people couldn't afford them or some of the other things. So that was an easy entry, and I found out that the reason why I got off on just saying that is because we have to find different ways. I noticed that you kind of do the same thing too. I ended up buying your songwriting. Your songwriter music licensing book. I forget the exact title, but
right, yeah. Well, that's what this reminded me of. Yeah, I have it was an $11 ebook, which
right.
is my
well, that was the first thing that I got from you, and then I ended up actually buying your whole course after that.
Oh, cool.
But I started out with that one because I don't know a lot about that side, but I know a little bit enough about it. So I said, well, let me just kind of check out what's going on in here. And so I think the things that we're doing is very, very helpful to people to give them a glimpse in, and then if they want more and more knowledge, they can go ahead and look farther. So
yeah, absolutely. And if I could just interject really quickly, I completely agree with what you're saying, and knowledge is power. And you mentioned the fact that I went to Berkeley, and I did, and it was a great experience. It's a great institution, but with that said, you don't need to attend a $40,000 a year school to be successful in the music business. And I know a lot of people, that I know one guy who didn't go to college at all is probably the most successful musician I know. I won't drop his name; it's not relevant. But the fact is, you need to know where the opportunities are, and so whether or not you're able to attend a Berklee or a music school, those are great experiences, but not a prerequisite to being successful in the music industry.
Absolutely. And then the key, and I have to say, it's pretty much the key with anything, is just simply get started. If you just simply get some forward motion, you're going to be good.
Yep, just get one foot after the next and keep learning as you go.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, hey guys, you guys are on this call too. If you want to check out Aaron's site, like I said, look at and click that button, the big button that's on the page that you came and you're listening to the webcast in. There's a link to his site there. Just click that, and that'll take you right there. Go ahead and do it now. Check out what Aaron's got going, and just it's a whole nother side that's open for you that. Like I was mentioning the webinar I did the other day, and a lot of people didn't realize that, hey, I can actually get my CDs and stuff done. I've got a lot of music that I've been playing and everything, but I'm saving up so I can get 1,000 CDs printed. I'm saving up so that I can think about getting the artwork really good and getting the distribution. I don't want to just burn something on my computer where it looks kind of crappy and cruddy. And then I showed them some resources where, hey, you can get your CDs burnt for as little as $1, so there's no excuse. With full color art that looks as good as anything you've got on your hard drive, that's how good it'll look on the disc. Shrink wrap, barcode, and all kinds of things like that. And there's all these resources out here that can really help you get going now if you have any kind of music that's ready. And then the other side is that if you do something like that and you have your product ready and you put it together, not even thinking in terms of like just getting it out there to sell it is the usual thing, that can actually become your electronic press kit. So if you want to hand that to make it available to music supervisors and people like that, how much more is that going to make your stuff stand out than somebody else's, because yours just looks professionally done and professionally packaged already. That kind of makes you stand out a little bit compared to everybody else is just throwing anything out there. Yep. Sure,
that makes perfect sense. What's the name of that? Is the company that does dollar CDs?
I'll give that to you. I'll share that with you later on, because that was something that we just had it on a paid call, and it wouldn't be fair to give that out now. Gotcha. But but there are plenty of resources to get things going here, and the traditional record deal. Like I said, my job right now is to make people realize that you can fire the record companies if you want to. So, Aaron, what else would you say people would need to think about in terms of, if they want to jump into this kind of industry and everything? There's a lot of people I know, and you probably know too, that have tons of songs sitting on their hard drive or things that they mess around with. Do you have to have the finished perfect masterpiece done to be able to do that, or is it possible to even use some of the things that you have that are sitting around as ideas and things like that, as long as they sound good?
Well, for TV and film licensing opportunities, production really is important, which is why I'd love, like I said at the beginning of the call, I'd love to bring you on and have you talk to my subscribers, because production is really important. But that said, there are licensing opportunities for, there's a lot of stuff being licensed on the internet now, and there are companies that cater to, people who make YouTube videos, for example. So
you can get paid for YouTube video music?
You can, and it doesn't obviously pay as much as like a feature film, but it all adds up, right? I get checks for, several $100s a year for demos of mine that people license and use in YouTube videos. So if you know where those companies are, you can make money from all of your recordings. But then, but with that said, for TV and film stuff, production really is important, and it's becoming more important. The more competition there is, the really good stuff tends to rise to the top.
Right. That makes sense. Like now, there's a few companies out here that a lot of people have seen. So I'll just mention some of the general ones because mostly everybody knows about places like Broad Jam and Rumblefish and Taxi. We've seen companies like that. Are they worthwhile actually participating with these type of companies? And I also know within your course you've got many others. So like I said, any of you guys go ahead and click that link and check out what he has, because he goes way in depth even more. But those are like some of the big three that we see in all the magazines. Do they work, or are they worth investigating?
Well, you mentioned several different ones: Broad Jam, Taxi, Rumblefish. But like you said, there are hundreds and hundreds of libraries, supervisors, publishers. So there are a lot of different options in terms of people you can connect with. Rumblefish is a good company. They actually do some of the internet licensing that I spoke about. Broad Jam and Taxi, I don't really know as much about those companies. I was a Taxi member for a year, and didn't make any money from it. So I would stick to I would stick to companies that are established, that are licensing music. And but with that said, you have to do research. I'm always meeting musicians who are working with companies that I'm not familiar with that they've had success with. So what works for one might not work for another, and vice versa. So there's a lot of different companies out there. Like you said in my course, I have a directory that includes several hundred, but Rumblefish is a good one. Pump Audio is another really well-known one, and then there are hundreds of smaller boutique libraries and publishers.
Yeah. How do you get paid?
So when you license a song for a television show, it works a little differently for theatrical films, but I'll start with TV shows. You get paid generally twice. Up front, you get what's called a licensing fee, and if you are working with a publisher or a library, they generally split this with the writer. So let's say a TV show wants to license one of your songs. Maybe there's a $1,000 licensing fee. That would be split 50-50. You'd receive $500. The publisher or library would receive the other half. And then you get paid again on the back end for what's called a performance royalty. And there are different arrangements. Oftentimes, performance royalties are also split 50-50 if you're working with a publisher. So they get what's called a publisher's royalty. You get what's called a writer's royalty. But there are variations on that. Some publishers only take 25% of the overall royalty. It gets a little complicated. It's hard to give you a really in-depth answer. This is one of the things in my course that I break down.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, you get paid twice. You get a licensing fee, and then you receive a royalty on the back end. And the royalties, can be substantial depending on the length of the placement.
Now, let me ask you this, because, like, for example, I have my own publishing company, and how would that apply to somebody like me? Because my connections are definitely through music-related, the normal channels of music.
So how would it relate to you in terms of placing artists that you work with in television shows?
Well, no. And the reason why I'm asking kind of on behalf of the other people out there that are either have their own publishing companies or are thinking about set up my own publishing company, because you're saying the performance royalties and all that being split between the publisher and such and such. So a lot of people are going to think, well, I'll just set up my own publishing company and then I can keep it all. It isn't that simple.
Well, sure. You can, but what makes that hard, again, is developing relationships with music supervisors. So sure, hypothetically, musicians can act as their own publishers and cut out the music publisher and go direct to music supervisors. But in reality, it's easier said than done, because again, you have to remember that some of these publishers have been in business for years, and when supervisors need music, they have this established channel already in place. So why would they work with, Joe Blow songwriter as opposed to this person they've known for 20 years.
Right.
So you certainly can. Anything can be done, but it takes more time and ambition.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that makes sense, and that's what I wanted to ask, because I know a few people would probably think that it's like anything else within the entertainment industry. It's all about relationships more than anything else, really.
Yeah, and I think, let me just, one more quick thing about publishers, because they do sort of get a bad rap, but, there's a lot of work that goes into being a songwriter, being a performing musician, plugging your own stuff. If you have the time to wear a myriad of different hats, I would say go for it. It's in your financial best interest, but at the end of the day, there's so many hours in a day, so to me, it makes sense to delegate some of this work to other people and share in the monies that are made.
Well, at that same time, that if you spend all the time trying to go out there and shop your own stuff and everything, you could be using that same time to actually create and have more, because this is a numbers game. It's a numbers game. Exactly. So I would say try to do both if you're pursuing licensing. Call supervisors, but also be open to developing relationships with publishers too. Mm-hmm. Now let me ask you. Here's one other thing, and I mean I already know the answer to this, but what is your opinion on like, there's some people that get so caught up in their music, so I get it all the time, the 16-bar intro. You know what I'm saying? Or the 64-bar getting to the chorus and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, especially in licensing, it's you want your songs to get to the point, rather quickly. So, this isn't a great forum for really long, drawn-out intros and epic, songwriting. This is really, think pop songwriting. Think things that could be on the radio. Is a good sort of barometer for whether or not you're in the ballpark.
Now, what did you think about? Because I thought this was very interesting. What about the success of a guy like Moby? Because how his success just kind of took off. Left field, but it was basically, now how did this stuff first get out there? Was it through, because I mean I first got hip to him before his records were out by stuff being on I guess it was commercials and stuff like that, and then next thing I know he's got records, but I think didn't he have stuff on the internet first too, and just kind of everywhere, ubiquitous with his music, and it just kind of took off on its own? Yeah,
I don't know Moby's story that well. I don't know exactly what broke him. I know he has done some licensing for, I think, Apple, right? And,
he was just like everywhere for a minute.
Yeah, well, he's a good example. Again, I don't know the exact story, but he's definitely a good example of an established artist who is reaching people through licensing, in addition to, like you said, the internet and radio. So that that's a little bit of a different story than the indie musician who makes a living licensing music. But I guess the point is licensing is it's really a great forum for reaching people regardless of what stage you're at in the game.
Well, that's, I mean, and I'm not 100% familiar with his exact story either, but if my understanding is correct, it was basically he was unknown and then went out there, started doing this stuff, and that's how he ended up getting all this stuff, by putting it out there like that. So, the big guy that we know as Moby right now, basically started out as a guy that just had a bunch of stuff recorded and ready to go. And then he just put it out everywhere, went and got some licensing deals, put it on the internet, got it placed in commercials and stuff like that, well before he got a record deal. And then people heard it on the background music on commercials on TV, and then suddenly it's like, what is that? Who's playing that? Exactly.
Yeah. Well, as I'm sure you're aware, colleague, the distribution channels, are changing, and radio, isn't what it used to be. So I think that's why it's so important for artists to know about licensing, whether or not the goal is simply to make money, make a living as a musician, or if your goal really is to to become a well-known name, I think there's no reason you shouldn't be pursuing licensing, regardless of what stage you're at in your career.
Right. Well, Aaron, I think because we're going to do another call, we've got to do this again, and so I don't want to exhaust everything out right now. But I want to go back to the Q&A real quick. If you guys have any quick questions for Aaron, put them into the Q&A box, and I'm going to go through here and go through a couple of more, and then we'll let everybody get back to their Sunday. Okay, let me see. Rodney was asking, will I be doing that paid call again? And Rodney, I'm considering actually putting it up and making it available again. So probably, because I've gotten quite a few people that weren't able to attend live, and they said they wanted it. It's just what they wanted to be able to do. And I know a lot of you are talented musicians that have stuff ready right now, and you definitely need to have your stuff out there, especially with this window of opportunity coming right now for the holidays and everything in New Year. So, yeah, I'm thinking I'll probably do that. Okay, Travis was asking, he said, ask your guest, is there any kind of website or source to submit your music to for music licensing? And I think we partially answered that anyway with talking about, like, the Rumble Fishes and those.
Exactly. There are hundreds of sites. There's no one particular site I would direct people to.
All right. But Travis, check out, like I said, click that link that's on the page and everything, and then go check out his site, because he's got a directory in there that lists all kinds of stuff and resources in there, and also just to get further information, all of you, if you want more information, just click on that link and you'll be able to really get a heads up. Because most people don't know this information, guys. Most people aren't even considering it, So you can really get in. This is a great time to get in, and it's another back door. Let me see. Let me go down here. Vincent was asking, how do I make vocals fit in the mix? And what's up, Don Patterson? Got you. Okay. Sitting the vocals in the mix, and that's, a little more in depth. So, like I said, I'm trying to close this out. But basically, the way to sit vocals in the mix, the real secret is if you got a song that's vocal centric, then what I usually do a lot of times when I'm mixing a song, and I know the vocals definitely have to be there, clear, present, up top, up front, but still sitting with everything around them, I'll start with the drums and vocals. I'll start right off with the drums, then put the vocals right in next and get a good balance between them, and then surround the vocal with the other stuff, and try to always keep checking to make sure I'm not losing the vocal as I add stuff. That's the short answer. It's a little more involved with that. I'll go deep into that in my product, Mixing Secrets Revealed, which you guys know, some of you that are new on here, I already announced it before. It was going to be released on the 15th of December, but my mother had a health issue, so right now she's still not out of the woods, so I kind of decided not to do my product launch on the 15th. I'm going to do it in the middle of January. I don't have the exact date yet, but be on the lookout for that. But that's going to be my in-depth mixing product. It's called Mixing Secrets Revealed, and you can get on the pre-notification list at mixingsecretsrevealed.com if you want to. If you're on my list, which obviously you are here, you're going to get notification of that anyway. I'm considering maybe doing a soft launch to kind of get feedback from people, what more to add, what they want to know. So I may do that like around the 15th or something like that, but still haven't decided on it yet. So the setting the vocals in is a big, huge part of that. I'm going to show you some techniques within the mixing of how you can make your vocals stand out, how to make EQ and compression work together, how to use certain things like how to use parallel compression to make the vocals work, and little tips and techniques that now a lot of people have heard about. You may have read about it in the magazine, but nobody's really shown you how to go about dealing with these things. So I'm very proud of the way Mixing Secrets Revealed is coming on, and I really want to get a bunch of people on that, and it's going to be huge. Let me move on to a couple others and see if anybody put any questions for you, because I want to get to that. What's up, Bobby? I got you on here. Julius, Nitty Man. Hey, we got a bunch of good folks on here. Is my my soldiers out here. Okay. Okay. Travis is getting your package, man. He's gonna get it. Let's see. He said Okay, he said, in your opinion, Aaron, should you submit music that's on your CD or music that we submit to labels for songwriting purposes? So I'm assuming that he has a CD of his own stuff, and then also he has some other stuff submitting for songwriting purposes, but it's all independent. That's what I'm kind of gathering from that question. What do you think about that?
I'm not sure I follow the question. I'm not sure I follow, colleague. What's the question?
Well, I guess he wants to know, should you submit music that's on your own CD, or just like music that you submit to labels and publishers just for songwriting purposes? So I'm assuming he's a writer and an artist.
Okay. I think, if I understand the question, can he submit music that maybe production-wise isn't where it needs to be? Is that kind of what he's asking?
No, I'm thinking what it is he has his own CD, probably, that has his own, probably him as an artist, you know, and so he probably sells that already out there or whatever, and as an independent. But he probably also has some other songs that aren't him. Maybe it's just tracks, or maybe it's somebody else, some female vocalist or such and such like that. I guess he wants to know, should he submit it all for music licensing, or only the other stuff that's not him?
As long as he has the rights to it. You know, if they're his compositions, he wrote the songs, you know, he's good to go. Sometimes publishers will ask for vocal release forms, so if there's a different vocalist, they like to know that the vocalist has consented to selling their performance. But, you know, generally speaking, if it's his song, he wrote it, you know, it's his property, you know, intellectual property, so to speak, so he can do whatever he wants with it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, I've got a question from Ben about EQ. He said, how much bass EQ should I put on the bass guitar to get a real good boom sound in the mix? And that's real interesting, Ben. I don't know if you had a chance to check out, go to 10bucktutorials.com. That's 10, T-E-N, bucktutorials.com, because my very, was it the first one? Well, the first two tutorials in that sequence are about dealing with things like that. Actually, I think the second tutorial, which the people who signed up last month, they should have just now gotten that second tutorial, dealt with that exact thing, where I go through and show you the effects of dealing with bass EQ, separating bass, because I was dealing with a track that had like about 5 or 6 different bass low-end elements, and so everything couldn't be right there. You know, something had to give, so you got to, you know, make space for the different things to make everything heard. So I kind of gave some of my techniques on that. So yeah, just go there and check that out. I think, you know, you might be interested. Okay, looks like that's basically about it. Okay, Mitty Man got one on here. Mitty Man was asking, do your compositions have to be registered with the Copyright Office?
Well, you know, that's a good question. You don't necessarily, you know, to license your music, it doesn't have to be copyrighted. I think it's a good idea just to protect yourself, but it does need to be registered with a performing rights organization. The two main ones in the U.S. for ASCAP and BMI. So that's another one of those areas that I go into in depth in the program. But that's how you get paid. So you want to make sure you're registered with a PRO.
Yeah, and have your songs protected by copyright as well. Rodney was asking about the initial people who signed up for the Mixing Secrets webinar back in June. Will they get the product, or will they have to pay for it? Rodney, no, you're good, man. You know, all the initial people that worked on the that helped me create the webinar videos, you will get the product for free. That's how I like to do it. People come in early as early birds and help me make this stuff, then I either give it to them for free or I give them my 100% credit towards what the free thing is. But because you guys helped me get in and get that started, the people that signed up for the initial thing in June get it 100% free. Now, I started selling the webinar videos afterwards, and those people will get a credit towards the final product, because the final product is going to be more than what you paid for those videos. But what I'm going to do is just charge you the difference. So either way, it's a good deal for everybody. It's like getting the product for free, you know. So you're going to, and believe me, it's going to be so loaded, you're going to be like, wow, this is a major deal from Khalik. And so I like to take care of y'all because y'all have helped me, and I appreciate you. And you know, that's going to be a wonderful thing on both sides. So anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and close it out and wrap it up here. Aaron, I can't thank you enough for coming on here, man. This has been very informative, a great call, and I definitely am looking forward to doing another one with you, and I definitely would look forward to doing one with you or your audience as well. I think people need to know that there are alternatives out here, and what you're doing is a wonderful thing, man.
Yeah, Khalik, thanks for having me. I actually, I don't know if you noticed, but the call dropped, and I just called back in. So I caught the tail end of what you're saying. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, man. I'd love to, like I said, do something with you where I have you come on and talk to my subscribers. That'd be awesome.
Wonderful, wonderful. We'll definitely set that up then, too, because I think you're doing a wonderful thing, man. People need to know about it, and I'm working on my side, too. So let's go out here and, like I said, let's fire the record companies. Okay.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, let's do something together. It sounds like you're doing great work as well, and production is a really important area. So I'd love to set something up with you. We can talk about that after or off the call.
Wonderful.